It's about 68 days, I think. And Bob, you'll correct me maybe, but 68 days until our next 2024 United States presidential election. And I have a lot of questions. And I think warriors out there, you do too. So I called him one of our political experts. He is a warrior, a dear friend, Robert Stranieri, to break it all down and help us with a couple of questions that I have. Because, Bob, let me tell you a little bit about Bob. He's a longtime political strategist, attorney, New York man about town, I like to call him. And he represented a district in Staten Island in the New York Assembly for, I think it was 24 years, if I recall. He's a dad, he's a granddad. He has his finger on the pulse of what is going on. And he recently, and we're going to get into this, he attended the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee as a New York State delegate. Oh, I want to hear all about that. So I want to welcome him back to the Warriors because he's been here, different incarnations of radio shows, but right now we got him right here on the Warriors channel. So let's get to it. Welcome, Bob Stranieri, to the Warriors. How are you, Bob?
All right, yourself.
Always
you're motivated, good. And there's a touch of anger in your voice.
No. I'm always. That was the pre-show. That was the. Well, you know what, Bob? I'm going to jump right into this because no holds bar. We're friends. We talk a lot. Very transparent about things. We're here in New York City, New York State. Bob, when did New York State lose their minds? Because the Republican Party. Now, this is my opinion. The home of Teddy Roosevelt. I was thinking about this morning. We had. Let's see, who else do we have? Even Governor Pataki. We had the great Rudy Giuliani at one point, America's mayor going on. Why, in my opinion, is New York State, the Republican Party, they seem to me like they're doing nothing and they're giving up. And I've heard the excuse a few times in the past, well, we're a blue state, we're a Democratic state. What's your take? Because I want to point out in our last election for governor with Governor Kathy Hochul, sitting governor, and Lee Zeldin, I thought that campaign was pretty close with both of those candidates. It wasn't that far apart. So give us your take and help us with this because I am kind of mad as you know what.
Lynn, this has been a long and slow process that predates George Pataki. The erosion actually started in 1974 with Watergate. Historically, in the 20th century and into the early 21st century, the New York legislature has two houses. The Republicans controlled the state Senate for more than about 3 years in the 20th century. And the assembly always went back and forth. The districts are smaller. And this was before Baker versus Carr said that all districts had to be on the basis of population. So the Republicans had a good base. When I started in politics, the Republicans had both houses of the legislature and every statewide elected official except for the controller, which was Arthur Levitt. And Arthur Levitt always was able to win. Rockefeller won, beat Harriman in 1958. And that really strengthened statewide the Republican Party. Both his personality and his finances were very strong. Watergate 74, the Republicans lost the assembly. And they've never had it back since. Not only did they lose it, but they lost it by a substantial margin. When I got elected in 1980, there were 7 of us elected from the city of New York, and there were 65 out of the 150 Republicans in the assembly. 1982, with reapportionment, I was the only Republican assembly member left in the city. Wow. And in the years since, up to 2 years ago, we never had more than 3. We had 3 in 1984 in the Reagan election. But it has been very frustrating. And with Lee Zeldin's help, we finally elected a few Republicans in Brooklyn. We added a seat in Staten Island that we've tried for many, many years to win. So right now we have 6 members of the Republican Party serving in the assembly. But what happened over the years, the Senate, which was Republican, not by a lot, found itself working with Democratic assembly members because they were the majority. The majorities control everything. I was the Republican floor leader, as you know, responsible for debate. But the fact was they didn't develop a farm system. So when the senators were retiring or running for re-election, you had well-known Democratic Assembly members ready to take their seats. And what happened, of course, is once the Senate was lost, I really think that was the end legislatively of the Republican Party. Now, we were getting beaten down in the suburbs for the last 15 years or so. But the last 3 years, we've come back. We now have control of Nassau, Suffolk, the district attorney's offices, the legislature's there. But we're still suffering in Westchester. When I was elected, out of the 6, 7 assembly seats in Westchester, all but one were Republican. Now there are none that are Republican. And of course, losing Westchester is really what cost Lee Zeldin the election. It was Westchester and Manhattan, where we live, unfortunately, which did not give him the vote he deserved. But the reason we elected the additional Republican congressional members, which allowed the Republicans to be in the majority in the House right now, were the coattails of Lee Zeldin. And Lee did very well in the city. He did very well in minority communities, and he has given us hope for the future. Hochul is a disaster. She was on the ropes, but she had a lot more money than Lee had, although Lee raised a reasonable amount of money. And I think Lee is positioning himself to run again in 2 years. If you see the polling on Hochul, she's really underwater right now. And she's not making French. And this congestion pricing that she has advanced, and which former Governor Cuomo got through the legislature, except for people in Manhattan, makes no sense. Lynn, it has nothing to do with traffic congestion. It is just seen as a source of revenue for the MTA. Do we want an efficient, safe subway and bus system? Yes, but that should be paid by all the taxpayers, not just people who drive into the city. Look, why would you drive into the city, pay the tolls, pay $50 or more to park your car every day, unless it was necessary, either for safety reasons or for difficulty in commuting from the outer boroughs? Sure, if you look at the polling, people who live in Manhattan don't own cars and don't drive them. They're happy with congestion pricing, but it has nothing to do with cutting down on the traffic. It has everything to do with just raising money. And that's why Hochul backed off now, because she knows this is politically lethal this year in the suburbs. And in, Staten Island and in Queens, where we do have opportunities, in Brooklyn, to pick up a couple of seats that I've been, working on with the Republican leadership.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. But I also heard, getting back to congestion pricing, it sounds like all of a sudden it occurred to me, it's kind of a weird thing, congestion pricing. The name of it, seeing that, and as you're in the city here, I'm seeing all those things that are constructed over, Midtown and all that. I do hear once the election's over, it's happening. I do hear that. So then I also hear, if you read the studies and things that have been put forth recently, something like, I think it was like 87% of MTA, the bus and subway workers, have been attacked. Did you see that, Bob, at all?
Absolutely frightening.
And that is completely frightening. And people who live in the outer boroughs certainly depend on subways and buses. At least you and me, we can walk around here, right?
Yeah,
if need be.
Absolutely.
We could jump in a cab if need be. But when you live way out there, you're out in Staten Island and you work in Midtown or something, you depend on those modes of transportation. I found that to be so frightening that, remember, the number's always higher than whatever's reported, because a lot of people don't speak up. They don't report things. But I want to know, I really want to know, Bob, I'm not kidding. And I say this to you a lot. I feel like I'm a broken record. We've got different GOP here in the city, in the state, Republican clubs and this and that. I have to say, I'm going to say I have no party. I don't like labels. I think we live in a new environment now. I'm an American. I want what is best for families and kids, crime, education, economy. I want all that. I'm calling myself an American. I don't fit in. Why? Why are they not doing more? Why aren't they coming together, these different bodies, to fight this? Because as you pointed out, Lee Zeldin did very well. And I agree with you. I think he's very well positioned in the future. But it's going to take a little, rolling up the sleeves, a little elbow grease, an everyday onslaught of getting in faces. And I'm not seeing it. What is your opinion why they are not coming together as a whole and doing
Well,
anything.
Lynn, it's very frustrating to live in this city, or I'd say live in any city in America, and see
Yeah.
the issues that people confront every day. And yet, when elections come around, they vote for the same people back into office. Although, if you look at the number of people who are participating in elections, it is getting fewer and fewer, less and less out of frustration. What it takes to win in a city like New York is a great deal of money, as Mike Bloomberg was able to marshal. Rudy Giuliani caught a different time. 25 years ago, this was a different city.
Yes.
And the makeup of the city was quite different. It was very different under John Lindsay. And I was very involved in just getting out of law school in his 1965 campaign. And, it's every 20 years historically, we go back to Fiorello LaGuardia, we were able in this city to elect an independent Republican. As you know, Fiorello LaGuardia said there's not a Democrat or Republican way to pick up the garbage or make the streets safe. And John Lindsay sort of picked up that theme in 1965. And then Rudy Giuliani picked it up against David Dinkins. Actually, if you look at the Giuliani elections against Dinkins, he lost the first one by about 50,000 votes. And he only won the second one because there was a fall off in Dinkins' votes. It wasn't that Giuliani necessarily increased. And of course, his reelection was overwhelming. But that was a different time. And Mike Bloomberg, when he ran for the third term, narrowly won. And it was only because he had so much more money to spend than Bill Thompson. It takes a great deal of money to get people's attention in cities like New York. Having been elected in Staten Island, I had a daily newspaper that I was in every day. I had cable television in Staten Island that I was on all the time. But when you live here in the other boroughs, most people have no idea who their representative is. There's virtually no coverage of the state legislature in the city papers, unless it's for something with corruption, or maybe the day the budget is passed, for which people have no idea what's in the budget anyway. So it is very frustrating and a difficult process to connect with people. I always enjoyed campaigning and being in front of supermarkets and shaking hands. And that's how you get votes. I used to kid and say I have a master's of law from NYU Law School, but I'm having more fun standing in front of the supermarkets.
Because you're kind of a ham bone and you like it. That. But but if you're going to be, I don't even know if the word's politician. I don't even like that word. If you're going to run in these elections or be part of this, you have to have, Bob, your kind of personality, in my opinion. I used to see at the subway stops years gone by, people shaking hands and all that. I haven't been seeing that in the last few years in Midtown or anything like that, but I used to see it. So I think also, let's get back to, I think the election cycle, I think people are so exhausted. Now, I remember telling you the other day when I saw you for our brainstorming strategy lunch that we had, that I was shocked to learn that the average age of the voter overall in our country is 55. I found that shocking. I think people are, do you think this election cycle now is too long? People after the last election have given up. They say we are in this blue state. And I'm talking about New York right now. Just forget it. But I say we have to be warriors. We cannot have that attitude. We have to keep going. What do you say about all of this?
Well, then we have the 24-hour news cycle now all the time. We have the internet. We have shows like your shows. I mean, we never had so much of an opportunity for people to hear news, or if they're interested in it, but it's certainly out there to get. So people are inundated. If you look at the polling right now, and I want to jump into this because I think this is kind of where we're going. If you look at Kamala's draw, she's not taking people who were voting for Trump to all of a sudden switch and vote for her. I think what has happened to a degree is that people who were frustrated with Biden, who are Democrats and maybe weren't going to vote just out of disgust and disappointment, are maybe coming back to the fold. This election, I believe, is coming down to a handful of independents who have, I guess, yet to make up their mind or maybe rethinking things. But if you look at the polling, while Biden was still in it, with all of the issues in Republicans' favor, they've never lined up so strongly for Republicans. Biden was only down 4 points. again, not nationally against Trump. He was within 3 and 4 points in every swing state with all of the issues in the Republicans' favor. So things have moved a little bit, in my opinion, on enthusiasm for Camilla, who's always smiling now. I think we talked about a little of this at lunch. When you look at Camilla, she always has a smile on her face. When you see Donald Trump, he comes across as a grouchy, angry old man. In contrast, now, one of the things people want is they want to like their elected officials. I mean, what helped Trump was Hillary was even more disliked than he was. I mean, Trump was about 46% approval against Hillary, but she only had a 43 approval rating. If you look at Camilla visually, she's a nice looking woman. She has a smile, makes people feel good. Trump has to lighten up. He's coming across as a grouch. And they have not figured a way in these 5 weeks to kind of promote him better. Even if you look at Fox, which should be Trump's channel, the pictures of Camilla are nice and smiling. And until this week, all of the pictures of Trump were grouchy. I see they put up a couple of new stills of him with sort of a smile.
Well, okay.
But that's what people see. Visuals are so important.
I agree.
People react to.
I agree, but remember, Bob, I got to challenge you here. Since I was agreeing the other day with you, now I'm disagreeing just a tiny bit, because all she's doing now is presenting that plastic smile, no matter when you see her. And I actually think the election, people vote party lines, no matter what, right? They don't care what Trump says, they're voting for him. Okay.
Yep.
They don't care what Kamala, whatever her name is, because nobody's really sure. Everybody says it. Bill Clinton said it a certain way. Kamala, he called her. We're not really sure. Okay. So Kamala, I think, instead of the cackling and laughing, I think she's been training for the last probably couple of years, waiting for this. This is my opinion. And now it's just to have that smile nonstop. They are joyful. This is their message. I find it greatly offensible, though. Well, a couple of things, Bob. I actually think if it's coming down to the independents, I guess, I think a lot of them, when they walk in to vote, they're going to decide like that morning, or I'm not kidding, or when they're walking in, or somebody's going to say, but here's the part that Republicans are not doing enough of. It's about truths and facts and realities. For instance, let's get to families and kids. Let's get to the border a little bit. 320,000 children, it was just announced, from the Biden-Harris administration. We've lost them. That came over the border unaccompanied. 320,000. If I was a Republican working on this, I would have that visual of 320,000 kids, not to mention the 85,000 they admitted to losing last year. To me, that's over 400,000. Every day, Bob, if I was working on this campaign, I would have these visuals and be reminding 24/7, blasting out emails, text messages, because I'm inundated with things from the Democratic Party. We need a donation. We need this. We need that. I'm not getting those things from the Republican Party. I don't know where those things are.
You are identifying one of the 3 top issues that are in the Republicans' favor overwhelmingly. That has to be presented, and it has to be presented with effective commercials, which he did not have in 2020, Trump, when he ran for re-election. I am hopeful that the commercials will be better than what I've seen so far. They're an improvement over what has been there, but also we may not be seeing everything because most of the money is being spent right now in the 7 swing states. I am sure that this is going to be a significant issue in Arizona and Nevada, both of which are very close and very competitive. In fact, the reason I think Trump came out with the no tips shouldn't be taxable was he was talking in Nevada, where the tourist industry and the hotel industry are the major employer. So that made a lot of sense. Of course, Camilla now agrees too. But if she wanted to do it, she's the vice president. Why didn't they do it over the last 3 years?
Stop your thought, because this morning, as I'm reading things and looking at things online, on the TV, on cable news, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, they are running this campaign like Trump's in the White House. And I'm like, so Republicans need to be reminding everybody every single day, No, you're in the White House. Like you and Joe Biden, who I just saw a visual of,
Biden
talking
has
about
been
visuals sitting on.
vaporized. He's been vaporized.
Why aren't the Republicans every day? Because I say to my husband, Bob, calling for, where is Joe Biden? Where is our president? I mean, I did see him on the beach sitting there again, but where is the president of the United States right now? We're not seeing him. We're not hearing
Lynn,
from him.
it is absolutely frightening.
This is criminal. This is
that
gangster.
This man has his finger on the nuclear button. This is the man, when we have threats to this country all over the world. We have terror threats right now here in America. We have the open border. We have the economy. We have crime. We have no president. And we have a vice president very comfortable riding the bus, I guess, the bus that Joe Biden wouldn't let that little schoolgirl ride on 40 years ago when he was serving in the United States Senate. But now she likes to ride the bus. Who's in Washington? Nobody. Who is in charge? Who knows? This is a very frightening time, I think, for America. But look how quickly Biden has vanished from any coverage,
shocking,
any input, any comment. Now, I guess some people are thinking, will he resign and then they'll put her in at least short term for president? And what would the effect of that be? I don't know. I think what you're saying, and I agree to an extent, that I think she has peaked. And I think the laughing and the giggles and everything else will wear off as people start to move towards Labor Day, when the average American will be more focused on the issues. I mean, we talk about this all the time because this is what we do. And this is, part of our professions. I know we do a lot of things, but I think the average American will begin to focus on this and will return to thinking about, hey, she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the lowest approval ratings of any vice president.
But Bob, we got to keep reminding the public. But we got to keep reminding them, because
absolutely.
Public attention span of a gnat, and also visual. It has to be constant visuals. Forget even cable news, because we know how that's all going in favor of Kamala. It has to be, believe it or not, correct things on TikTok. That's where you have a large, younger audience. So I don't care for TikTok. That doesn't matter what I care for. You've got to go where the audience is and serve them. It is not being served. I want to ask you about, I am totally offended that we are going to have a pre-taped interview, a double header, I guess you call it, with Harris Walls, that will be presented tonight at 9:00, which
and edited, I am sure, before it runs.
But that's why I'm saying, why aren't people, now maybe they are, because I'm talking to you right now, not watching other things. I would be screaming about this. We want a live interview. Also, I this whole thing about the debate. I personally think, in retrospect, Donald Trump never should have even debated Joe Biden. Think about that. Then we could have just taken that ride. What would have happened then? Think about if he never debated Joe Biden, where we'd be today.
Well,
I think we'd be winning. I don't know.
The more we look at this, it was probably set up that way, because
I think so.
They knew that he could not win.
Absolutely.
And let's get him out of the way now. And I have long said, and this is going back 2 years, I said Biden is not going to be the candidate, and the change will be made about the time of the Democratic convention. So there's no primary, and the political insiders will pick the candidate, which is exactly what happened.
Pure gangster. They dumped the guy. They just dumped the guy.
Yeah.
They just sent him out to pasture. Come on now, Bob. I think
the only question is whether they're going to push him to resign. I don't think he'll do that.
I don't think they're close enough. I think they're just going to let it. I think they're just going to let it drop.
If she starts to drop in numbers, will they try to do this to give her a kick up? Because I think she has peaked. I really do. And I think things will, we got to look and see where things are in about 10 days. Labor Day is coming up this weekend, and that's historically when numbers start to change. And if you look at the voting patterns for Republican presidential candidates going back to Bush 41, we were way down at the end of August.
Right.
And yet as people started to focus on who they wanted to vote for, the Republican message is much better. And it is absolutely in our favor on the issues more than I have ever seen. That's why she's trying all of a sudden to adopt all the Republican positions. I don't think it's going to work, because I think, again, the small pool of votes that are still available to be gotten are independent people who probably, if you look at the independent, but they're tending Republican anyway. And as they sort of get tired of the laughter and the giggles and the unwillingness to say anything, I think will resonate with them. And that's what this election is going to come down. So I'm still optimistic that we're going to, although I'm frustrated right now, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah. I'm agreeing with you. But I do think young people still, we have not serviced young people enough in getting them excited, getting them on board, offering them something is what I think. I feel like that's a big hole that was not plugged into. I want to get into, interesting though, how Kamala adopted, now she's showing a commercial with the wall. We at the Warriors do extensive work with all that. Like, I'm so highly offended. I'm so highly offended doing border work, working with law enforcement, border security, missing hundreds of thousand kids. I'm so offended. I asked you, Bob, where are all, and I'm asking women too, where are all the women, these so-called feminists, standing up for, children, like those kind of issues, mothers, like they're not coming out to stand up. I'm finding it so offensive. I don't care what one thinks about the border and the situation. These are missing children, right? How do you
what are the feminist organizations?
They say nothing. You know what?
Right now, silence, aren't they?
Well, let me tell you,
family and women.
I'm crying, Bob, because we part of the Warriors. No, but like we're involved. No, we're involved with National Organization of Women. We're on different coalitions with them. New York Anti-State Trafficking Coalition, New Yorkers for the Equality Model. The Warriors is all part of that, bipartisan, which all of this work should be, right?
Yeah.
They're speaking out about nothing except for one subject. You know what that is? I know if you think about it, that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, where are the children? I'm even going as far, and I'm all about our own backyard, the United States, but I'm part of a group of women from Afghan.
Really?
And what's being done to these women now, and especially in the last week, they are not allowed to even speak in the home, covered head to toe in black. I don't know how they breathe. You think with the UN, you think with all the different groups, they would speak out in support of women. They silence, nothing. And we're talking about girls. Girls are being hidden away because their mothers are afraid. They're going to be ripped out of the home. And a lot of them are. Mothers are actually marrying them off at 12 and 13 to Taliban members so they won't be gang raped and things. So like, where are all these big mouth feminists or big mouth Republicans? I'm sorry, Bob, posing in bathing suits. I'm sorry. We don't have time for this. Our country is at stake. This is the most important election, certainly of my lifetime. I feel this way.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, as a woman, I'm angry. And I just want to finish with, I'm angry about tonight is a pre-tape that you can't even sit and just talk. So I'm disregarding tonight. Of course, I'm watching it. I'm sure you will as well. But
the Yankees aren't playing today, so I won't be watching a baseball game.
Well, all right. We're not talking sports. That's the next show. But let me get into what do you think? I have a couple of questions to finish up with. Tell us about the convention. I'm very curious because I didn't know you were doing that. And so share with us whatever you want to share.
This was my 10th Republican convention. Wow. I think I'm a senior New Yorker as far as attending conventions. I thought it was the best organized convention I've ever been to. The greatest feeling of unity. I thought the speeches were all crisp. They were limited to about 4 minutes each. We paraded out our 10 candidates for the United States Senate in challenge seats. What was interesting, Lynn, every man and woman who are running has a military background. And I thought that was significant as far as how you assess issues and the challenges that you're willing to take on to serve in the United States Senate. So I was very encouraged, and we came out of there really feeling terrific about taking back the Senate, adding seats in the House, and New York was in play. I was sitting with the conservative state chairman, who was a good friend of mine. In fact, his first job was working for me when he got out of law school, right? He got out of a college, rather.
Interesting.
And New York was in play 5 weeks ago. and a plan was being put in place to how we were actually going to win New York for the first time since Ronald Reagan. I don't know if that's the situation yet today. Again, I think we have to assess where we are in about 10 days. But that's how strongly we felt about it. And Jersey absolutely was in play, and Trump was ahead in New Jersey, not by a lot, but he was ahead in New Jersey, which hasn't voted for a Republican, I guess, since the Reagan re-election year.
Wow.
So a lot of things were very encouraging as we left Milwaukee, and I hope we'll get back to that. And I think the next 10 days will give us an indication if we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I always say, like the last 30 days are the most important. I think that's when you can really bombard, hit, people make up their mind, people decide.
And early voting, Lynn, is going to start in a couple of weeks.
Right?
Yeah, September. I don't know why.
Don't get me started on that, because, you used to have like a card to go.
In New York, we would have absentee
in New Jersey,
voting.
like when I grew up, my parents always had, you had to have like a voting card and go in person. Because I remember my mother was always carrying around in her wallet her her voter ID card. That's the thing, Bob, that scares me. That I am so afraid the Democratic Party will say, because we are such joyful people, we brought out the youth vote. We brought out the young people. I think I may have mentioned this to you. But in essence, it will be all of these illegal aliens.
That's a real problem.
Which is another, we don't know. So the thing about this is, the most important thing that maybe you heard about this, Bob, but I don't know. Did the Republicans, has anybody been in there with the voter rolls and doing the work? That should have been in the last few years. Like, not that you're getting 50 going to one apartment number. I'm not hearing anything about this.
Lynn, we had this when you and I were talking last week. What's very interesting, then I looked at it. You realize that the swing states all have Democratic governors, with the exception of Nevada. And who controls the election process statewide? The Democrats.
Well, I'm scared.
And so that is a legitimate concern. And I also heard that the Democrats are also preparing to go into challenge, should we win the swing states and Trump win the election, they're going to want to go into court and try to challenge. Lynn, you can't win after the election. You have to stop the fraud before the election. To their credit, the Republican Lawyers Association and the National Committee have been working the last 2 years to get Republican lawyers to go into the courts and into the polling places and try to prevent what happened in 2020, where the election, in my opinion, was legally stolen. It was legally stolen because in the Democratic states with Democratic Supreme Courts, their highest state court, like our Court of Appeals, where you had Democratic majorities, ignored the state laws and the state constitution in allowing the harvesting of ballots, no check on who is voting. When you go in to vote in New York, you had to show a voter card. Even on historically, if you want an absentee ballot, you have to file an application. Then you get the ballot, and when it goes back in New York, they check the signatures. I know how it works here in New York. Unfortunately, that's not the case around the country.
Frightening, but we'll leave that for the. Obviously, you'll come back, Bob, leading up to the election, because we need your expertise. But let me finish up with two different things. And the first thing being, what would your plan be to get New York back on track? Obviously, we have to get rid of New York City and Eric Adams. I don't even know how he ended up being the mayor. I don't get it. What do you see? What would your plan be if you're in charge, Bob Stranieri, right now, of taking back the New York that we knew? Okay. Even under Bloomberg, it was great. He was kind of a businessman.
He ran it like a corporation.
But that's what you have to do. Clean up the garbage, run it like a corporation. The arts flourished. I can tell you, under his administration, lots of money, lots of partnerships, a lot of inclusive with all of that. What would you do right now? How are we going to turn this around?
What we need to do, Lynn, is come together in this city, Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, and independents, and get behind somebody who can run and win. Probably, in my opinion, someone from the private sector who understands how you deal in billions and large numbers of employees and has a common sense background, not somebody who rises out of a political system where a handful of political bosses select candidates. They know very few people will even bother to vote in primaries. It gets less and less. And that's how the candidates now are chosen. If you go back to, Fiorello LaGuardia was a fusion candidate. John Lindsay got the Liberal Party to endorse him, which was how he won the election. He broke away the Liberal Party, which used to be much stronger. It doesn't even exist anymore. But that was a key to John Lindsay winning in 65 and 1969. Rudy Giuliani had the issue so strongly in his favor, and the deterioration of the city under David Dinkins was so severe that Rudy Giuliani was able to win by just about 50,000 votes. That's how close it was, and how we turned the city around. And we had 20 good years under Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg. They ran the city the right way. They did what was right for all the people in the city, not what would be right for the political leadership in the city. That's what we have to do, in my opinion. And if we can accomplish that, this city will come bouncing back better than ever.
Well, you got to get out there on the bullhorn and announce this from Times Square, Columbus Circle, and all other points, because
if you stand there with me, we'll do it.
Well, I go to Times Square with, fentanyl awareness, protect children, not porn. I'm game. But here's the thing, Bob, it's I see it in Washington, just even in the last, I'll say since 2016, they do not work together anymore. Republicans and Democrats, it's oil and water, whatever you want to call it. Yep. They used to come together. Look, I'm represented by Jerry Nadler where I live.
I served with Jerry. I was a ranker on two
committees. Jerry knows who I am. Jerry will not give me my 15 minutes as a constituent. I don't like that. We're represented by Chuck Schumer. He knows who I am. I work on a lot of issues, bipartisan. He will not give me my 15 minutes. Gillibrand will not. I'm on many different women's things over the years.
The invisible senator who nobody in New York knows who she is.
I don't know. I get her newsletter every week, and it's like we're picking up garbage, or it's like something that's good, but forget it. We've got other issues right now. She will say to my face, "Oh yes, yes, I want to talk to you. Yes, here's the card for so and so at my never." So I find this, if they won't even meet with me in just let's exchange ideas, because you get your 15 minutes, I don't have much hope. Anybody really coming together like the old days in New York City to work together, try to elect our New York State. Finish us up with, because I want to have you on right after September 10th. We've got this debate pending that Trump says, apparently, remember, I don't even believe anything I read anymore, because I know how people are manipulating everything. Unless I write it myself, I don't. So he's saying he'll agree to any terms, and I don't know what's happening with her. What do you see with this debate or coming out of it? Or you just think it's low-hanging fruit to get some memes out of it?
The most crucial event, in my opinion, that will take place that we can foresee between now and Election Day. My opinion, Donald Trump lost 2020 with his performance in that first debate. He didn't listen to what Chris Christie and Rudy Giuliani, who prepped him and how to handle himself. And he was in total narcissistic attack and meltdown. And he lost because early voting started the next day. And the election, in my opinion, was over that day. He only lost by 100,000 votes nationally. And certainly there was nobody who watched that performance other than Trump himself, who thought he won. So that's got to be avoided. This is the most crucial event, in my opinion, between now and Election Day, as far as getting Donald Trump elected president of the United States. His performance against her. It's not easy. It's not easy for men to debate. I mean, I had women opponents myself. It's not as easy to debate against a woman. And somebody like Kamala, you saw her performance against Pence, and how she tried to cut him off and her snide remarks and things. She is not going to be easy. But on the substance, Donald Trump knows the issues.
Well, that's
he
just
knows them cold. and he will carry himself well. What he has to do is avoid a personal attack and just stand there and take it. Like Ali used to take the punches until he threw the last punch to finish off the opponent. That's what Donald Trump has to do here.
Oh my goodness, like Lynn at the Warriors, taking the punches for everybody. But here's the thing: I am a little bit encouraged by Tulsi Gabbard. Is now, she's a very sane voice,
well spoken, very articulate,
military. Think about it, she's a woman, because I think I really think Trump should have picked a woman as his running mate.
Absolutely.
I think that would have done a little something. I think it's time for a woman. We're like the only country in the world. We don't have a woman anywhere. Well, maybe Afghanistan, but besides them, because, we
have a woman vice president right now.
Well, yes, but we're talking about, I remember the excitement. Of course, I date myself, Geraldine Ferrara. Remember that whole thing?
Sure,
and that was what, 40 years ago, maybe, and that was going to be. And if it didn't happen and all that stuff, we should really, all right, we have Kamala, but see, I block her out of my mind, so it's like it doesn't exist.
No, I think you've touched on a good point. I think the Bobby Kennedy Jr. endorsement and her coming back to back was a very positive action in support of Trump. And again, those independent people looking at this, I think that brings them back to our team when they see that these two people who are both well-spoken, well-qualified, recognized as national leaders in various ways. That's very, very helpful to Donald Trump.
I agree. I think it's so important. Actually, I have one more question for you. I must, since I have you. Our work at the Warriors, it's always about families and kids, education, digital safety. What's your overall? It's kind of a loaded question I'm asking you. On all of this, I'm so concerned, Bob, because as we fight with all of this, whether it's sex trafficking, there's tremendous labor trafficking in New York State as well. It's falling by the wayside. Now we've got the schools. We do have Governor Kathy Hochul saying, I say governor because a lot of people will say to me, when I'm talking, they go, who's Kathy Hochul? Now I'm always like, Governor Kathy Hochul, New York State. She's now jumping on by 2025, the banning, there will be some legislation banning of cell phones in the classroom, but that's 2000, she says that now. We don't know. Everybody's flip-flopping. I'm very concerned. I work with so many organizations. They do not have the resources. We have programs that work to help people, to intervene. We do education so people don't get into this, kids especially. It's falling by the wayside. We are fighting so hard. What's your take on all of this? Because I'm very scared. You're a dad, you're a granddad. I'm scared, not for us, I'm scared for our children, Bob.
Lynn, I think you're doing just wonderful work for children of this country and families of this country. But I think this is what maybe has to happen. And I know you go down to Washington and you testify and you use your voice here in the media. To explain the issues and the alternatives and the threats and what we should do. I think what you might have, I know this is not easy, but it would be great if you could get some either, athletes or entertainment people on board, because they're listened to and got enough money for a couple of commercials here and there. I think you would rivet a lot of attention. You see how Tunnels for Towers, what they have done. I mean, they started in Staten Island, just a small organization, and how they are now building out the recognition with their commercials. People who are being helped, athletes and entertainers. Athletes and entertainers always get people's attention, it seems to me. I mean, when this is also how you win elections. When you get prominent people, you've already got then the name ID that people can relate to. I'm not saying put George Clooney in your ads.
Well, no, listen, we are actually, it's something I have always fought against, because I thought the subject matter itself, I have a background in entertainment.
Absolutely.
I still have my hand in it, but I always wanted this subject matter to kind of be the celebrity, be the star, be the focus. As opposed to people who did come to me when I formed the Warriors. Oh, we'll speak out for you, Lynn, but pay us $500,000. No, that has to be a PSA, but I will. There is good news. We are recently aligned with Senator Shannon Grove in California, doing excellent work with Paris Hilton. So we're launching.
Great.
Yes, because she went through, Bob, as a teenager. She was called a troubled teen. Her parents couldn't do anything with, these ranches they send kids to, and
yes,
these farms, and we're going to work. You're going to work, and you're going to listen, and you're going to go to boot camp. Her parents actually, not knowing, she doesn't blame them at all. They thought 25 years ago, like, this is what you do. That's what they were advised. And what she saw there, what she suffered, and other kids who are now adults have come forward. We know that these places re-traumatize, re-victimize, traffic, do a lot of abusive things. So actually, Senator Shannon Grove, she's doing terrific work in California. They just passed last night the bill, and it's about accountability for all of these ranches. I'm kind of bottom lining it here. These children are supposed to help that are getting over $3 billion a year from the government for accountability. So this is a really good move. Paris Hilton has a lot of followers, of course,
already. To hear that the California legislature is doing something worthwhile.
Senator Shannon, no, there are a couple of really good ones out there. Senator Shannon Grove. And I share with you, I was in California recently, and I saw where I was in San Diego. I saw a lot of Trump flags, a lot of Trump signs, and I thought, wow. And it's there. It's there. Bob Stranieri, we still have a lot more to talk about, but I'm going to let you go for today. Now, listen, I want you to rejoin me right after September 10th. So we'll talk about that, to have you break down this debate that I frankly think if Trump would just talk no matter what about the issues and pretend Kamala is not on the stage. That would be no, seriously, just he's got the issues, as you say, and point out with your expertise. He's got policy issues, track record of success. Ignore her like she doesn't exist. But there's a part of Donald Trump, and I saw it when he debated Biden. I could see he felt sorry for Biden at a point, almost. When he made that comment, they turned into a commercial or something. But I don't think he knows what he said. He didn't do that to be mean. It was just I saw this glimpse of he's got to be tougher. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Ignore.
No, he does. If he stays on message, he's going to win.
It's going to, well, it remains to be seen. We got to keep talking about it. And I'm going to send you out right now, 24/7, 365, start in Times Square. We've got to get the issues. We've got to get, missing kids. We've got to get the crime. You and me did not even touch on these illegal aliens that are infiltrating. As I have warned, they're not staying in our city and Denver and Chicago. They are now infiltrating into the suburbs and taking over with weapons, drugs, sex trafficking. That's their main business. We have to warn everybody. So we've got to keep our eyes on that and let the public
know. You're the Pauline Revere of the movement.
But here's the thing, Bob. Believe it or not, because we do this every day and we're in it every day. And the public, as you pointed out, they're not. They're paying the bills, the rent, the mortgage, trying to hang on, feed the kids, right? We know all that. It's our jobs. We have a platform. We have mouths. We know issues, right? We have to give it to them. Just hand it to the public, because we believe at the Warriors, when you give it and people know the information, then they'll get on board. But we have to give it. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
That's just it. So we got to give it. So keep up your great work. We love you.
Your great work.
Well, thank you. We love you dearly here at the Warriors. We depend on you. We've got to have your voice a little bit more on these issues, breaking down what things mean. Because again, people, they're busy doing everything. They don't exactly know, what is the New York State Assembly? They don't know the simplest of facts. And as you pointed out, they don't even know who represents them. They don't know. But if we hand it to them, they're gonna know. I'm gonna load into the body of this video different things, how people can contact their elected representatives, who represents them, where they can write, where they can email. Easy peasy for everybody. But Bob Stranieri, you are indeed, thank you for taking the time and sharing your voice and your expertise. I always enjoy talking to you. You are a wealth of knowledge. Now get out there, Bob, and get those Republicans in line to win this election. What do you say?
We're going to do it. Absolutely going to do it.
Thanks, Bob. We will speak again soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.